But I think by definition, Job's faith is irrational, right? That he takes the leap despite the lack of evidence, despite evidence to the contrary.
It's pre-rational.
How would you say it's
in a way
pre-rational?
It's you need a stance within which your rationality makes itself manifest. The stance itself is bounded, and the mythological response to your query, including, I would say, the aspect that brought in the issue of existential dread, is the stance is this. It's not this. It's not the stance of a prey animal. It's not the stance of someone paralyzed by anxiety. And you said, you made reference to waking up in the morning, and balancing, in a sense, the happiness with the pain. See, I actually think it's the wrong framework. And so I don't think the problem can be solved within that framework at all. It has to be solved. It's something like solution within the framework of the ultimately, an infinitely painful and rewarding adventure. And so in some sense, the hedonistic and the painful become irrelevant. And I'm not saying they're meaningless, because that would be foolish and it could easily be cruel, but it's not the right frame. The right frame is the frame that Job takes, which is, I could say this to you, for example. This would be derived from the morality in the book of Job. It is morally incumbent upon you to manifest a courageous faith. And that's a pre-rational decision. But we already admitted, both you and I already admitted, that you can't weigh up the evidence. First of all, you're not in possession of the evidence, which is also something that God tells Job, and Job admits. It's like, I don't have the evidence at hand. Okay, so you're fragile and mortal and prone to evil, and you don't have the evidence at hand. Okay, so what stance do you take? Well, the stance that Job takes is, I will be a faithful scout of the formidable future, no matter what hell comes my way. And it's a very interesting stance, because Job, and he does this very explicitly, his claim is, I am not to lose faith in myself or the ultimate spirit of reality, no matter what happens to me. And the interesting thing about that, and this isn't the reason for it, but it is a consequence, is that is a stance that does in fact maximize flourishing. But that's not the justification for it, right? And you pointed that out correctly. This isn't an argument from hedonism or even, I guess, the argument that it's the pathway that is least likely to lead to hell. That's kind of a variant of the hedonistic argument, except reversed, right? Is that any alternative pathway tends to degenerate into the most abysmal suffering you can possibly imagine. And I do believe that that's true in the final analysis. Now, that's a bit of a hedonistic argument, but it's only one of the elements of the argument.
Good. I think this is important, because you say that it's still relevant, the suffering, the happiness, the pleasure, the pain. The hedonism is still relevant, even if we have meaning and purpose. But suppose God decided that our purpose and meaning was to ensure the process of evolution continued with all of its blood and glory, and we stuff animals into factory farms and slaughter them and torture them forever. You'd go like, okay, that's not the kind of meaning that I was thinking about, God, right? I didn't think that's what constituted a meaningful existence. I thought my meaning would correspond to my happiness and pleasure. Like, they can't be completely opposed.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. No, they can't, but I don't think that's right. I think the Abrahamic vision is more existentially accurate and also more desirable. See, Dostoevsky kind of knew this, when he laid out his objection to reductionist rationalism in Notes from Underground. One of the things he pointed out about human beings, this was his fundamental critique of socialist utopianism. And it's kind of an Abrahamic critique. He said, look, if you gave people the opportunity to live a life devoid of, let's say, anxiety and pain, so that they had nothing to do, this is basically his words, but eat cakes, sit in bubbling pools of hot water, and busy themselves with the continuity of the species, that human beings were constituted such that the first thing they would do is take a mallet to the utopia and destroy it, just so that something interesting and adventurous would happen.
Smash the tables.
And I really, exactly, because we're not, the hypothesis is, and this is the Abrahamic hypothesis, is we're not built for hedonistic infantilism. That whatever the world's about, it's not about pain and pleasure. Not that they're irrelevant, because that's not a reasonable thing to propose, but that's not the issue. And that higher unity is something like, it's something like the intermingling of pleasure and pain. Think about it this way, man. When you think about your life and you wake up in the morning and you're just trying to justify your miserable existence to yourself, and your memory wanders down the pathways of your life, and you remember some event that befell you where you disciplined yourself and you strove against remarkable odds and you suffered along the way, but you accomplished the aim, and you take refuge in that memory. And that isn't a memory of the absence of pain. Quite the contrary. And it also might be that the antithesis of pain is something like the willingness to undergo it voluntarily. And that's certainly what's represented by the crucifixion. And so it's an embrace even of what's negative. It's certainly not a replacement of suffering with like hedonic gratification. It's certainly not the eradication of suffering. Now, maybe you don't like that world, and but there's a problem there too. This is the problem Job faces. It's like that you cannot like the world, but that doesn't mean that you can, what would you say? It isn't obvious that you have the capability or the right to stand in opposition to its moral order.